If you end on gospel, does it suggest that God isn't serious about the law? Hi, my name is Ted Rosenblatt, and I'm here with my father, Dr. Rod Rosenblatt, and this is Talks with Dad Rod. We Lutherans, as we just did in our last episode, hold to a law-gospel paradigm. Law, and then as you were taught, and you've quoted a number of times, I can't remember who, when you're preaching or when you're doing the sermon should be mostly spent on the gospel.
Yes.
A heavy dose of gospel.
Yep, that was from Walther.
If you wrap up the sermon on the good news and you don't finish on a to-do, which is law, when you try to free people and then give them a to-do is to put them under a form of the law.
Yep.
Does that then imply to the listener that God was kind of, I wasn't really terribly serious?
Yeah. It's hard to know the inner workings of the individual human psyche, but for heaven's sakes, Pastor, don't close with lettuce. LET space US. Leave that out. Let the Roman Catholics close with "Go serve the Lord." Let them do that. On your part, leave that out. You've just used a benediction, which is literally a good word, and leave them with that.
Doesn't that seem a little scary, though, as a shepherd, to just send the sheep out being free?
Mm-hmm.
You were just freed. Be free.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just send the sheep out being free. They might not do
the
things that we see in James.
Yeah.
In James, we see, a faith without works is dead, don't you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, take a chance with that.
Okay, let me back up. A sub question of this, maybe I'm ruining a future episode and I could use, I don't know. Is law the only motivator for people to do their good works for their neighbor during the week? You go and you finish on the law, and is that then the best way to get the sheep to go about their lives through the week doing good works rather than the freedom and fearlessness of the gospel?
Absolutely not. One of the sine qua nons that we used to learn at seminary was the law is absolutely clear in what it demands, and it gives you zero inclination to fulfill it.
I still remember the issue about standing with you at the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, and standing there, and they had that bucket with a rope, and the rope went between two pieces of wood with a hole that was made to fit the rope, and it disappeared down into the depths.
Uh-huh.
And there was a sign hanging there that says, "Do not pull."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I looked at that, and I was like 13, and I looked at that and squinted and went, yeah. Yanked that thing. And down below, there were these recorded voices that went, hey, stop it, there are people down here. All these like miners' voices like, quit touching the rope, there's people, And you're behind me, and I hear, Romans in action. And I've used it with my kids. I said, what's the first thing, if you're up on a high spot and I tell you not to look down, what's the first thing you do?
Sure.
This is the law.
Yeah, Paul argues, I would not known what coveting was till the commandment commanded me not to covet. In other words, the law stirs up sin in us, and we don't like to admit that, but that's what Paul says.
Dad, wait. I'm now a believer. Should it not stir up sin in me anymore because the new man and... No?
No. You and I will both die with still struggling with that.
So it seems counterintuitive to us to think that, or to even admit the possibility that we are going to better serve our neighbor throughout any given week, having been freed by the gospel, rather than being
commanded to do
being
it.
frightened by the law.
Yep. Exactly.
Do it or else
Yep.
is the law. Do it or else. It's either that or the gospel, is it
Yep.
not?
Yep. Yep. The good pastors have been trained to know that the law commands clearly, but gives no inclination or power to fulfill it. It's like gasoline on fire. It stirs up sin, Paul says, rather than hemming it in.
And so old Adam is frightened by the idea that if we aren't given marching orders and given some fire under our feet, that we won't, that we're, without the threat, we aren't going to do the good works. We're naturally rebelling away, as though as soon as God gives us the ability to be free, we will use it as license to not do.
Absolutely. No, it's no
to
wonder.
Not strive.
Yeah, it's no wonder that question comes up so often in Christian conversation. It's a good question. It's a good question. Well, does that mean license? No, and let me tell you why. And I'll go to Romans 6, other passages.
Let me toss this into the mix too. So if in your experience dealing with what Scripture describes as the bruised reeds and smoldering wicks,
right?
What does it mean for such people to receive, to hear a sermon that ends on the truly sufficient gospel of Jesus Christ?
Yep.
That his sacrifice and works are sufficient for them.
Yep.
And that no more work must be done that they may be saved. Their neighbors need their help.
Yeah, but God bless the preacher who's helping them to be clear about that. And there are a lot of bruised reeds and smoldering wicks all over the place. At the brink of, gosh, do you think this is really true? It doesn't seem to work out that way, and so forth and so forth and so forth. They need help. And the help is Christ, and Christ for them.
Do you think it's a good paradigm for a pastor or a priest or somebody in that position in any denomination? I tend to lump everybody together in Christianity. I know we have our position in Lutheranism, but if it is it best to make that the lowest common denominator for whom you're modeling your preaching after? Do you think?
Yeah, I tried.
When you're preaching and you're choosing what your message is going to be.
Yeah, Walter said with emphasis on gospel. I tried to do a little of that in a paper I gave called The Gospel for Those Broken by the Church. And I just stacked up passages of promises without comment, one after the other. And that's why I chose to do it. Just the promises.
Fear not, little flock.
Yeah, it's God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom.
And we're so afraid to end on that.
Be of good cheer.
Be of good cheer. Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Hope this is helpful for you. Come to 1517.org for more. And we will see you on social media. Talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us on Talks with Dad Rod, part of the 1517 Podcast Network. This podcast and all 1517's content is made possible through financial support by listeners just like you. Please visit 1517.org for more, and please consider clicking on the donate button and making a recurring or one-time contribution to help us share this good news in a world which so desperately needs it.